Morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Ask Melly. And the funny thing is, today we're talking about stress and how to maintain patience when you're pushed to your limits. And funny thing is, I just went through it because I started this with the wrong branding on my video. So here's a prime example of how you move through stress. Now, I want to talk about stress today because it was brought up in my wonderful, wonderful community, Darling, You Are Magical. And it was a question that somebody very dear to me in the group asked. And I really, really want to face this because it's something that we all face. Stress is just built into modern life. You can't escape it. Whether you're raising a family, running a business, working a job, dealing with family, like it's there. You can't escape stress. It is built into this human experience called life. But our ability to deal with it is extremely important to our general well-being. And I'll be completely honest, dealing with stress has not been my biggest strength, mostly for the patience factor. I'm not always a very patient person, and I've really had to work on this and develop my ability to deal with stress because I don't think it's something we're inherently good at. It is something we have to develop over time. Now, what happened with myself being very prone to stress, being a sensitive person, stress happens to me very, very quickly and in very unusual situations. And yet it took me a long time to differentiate between what was stressful and the societal expectation of what stress is. Most people believe that stress is this big moment where your whole world is ending and you're about to scream at somebody in the process. But stress can happen in a multitude of ways and on very subtle levels. So first off, I really, really want to get across that stress doesn't have to be this big thing. It can be just daily things, the minor things that are affecting you. And that will depend on your level of sensitivity. Now, what happens is that over time, that stress then has a very physical response on the body. It is very, very physical. And if it's not dealt with, it can land you in a health crisis, which unfortunately was my circumstance. Being in this state of constant stress ended up forcing my body to shut down in ways that was not pleasant until I had dealt with it and released this stress. Now, what I want to talk to you about specifically today is about how to learn how that stress affects your body, your mind and body, and how you can work through it. Now, here's the thing. Stress happens when your information coming in is greater than your ability to process it. So it doesn't have to be this big moment. It could simply be that there is too much happening and your ability to process is not keeping up with it, which is why there's different levels of sensitivity. Because if somebody is very perceptive, they're very sensitive, as we say, to everything going on around us, our ability to process that can sometimes not keep up. And this is what causes stress. Now, what happens from there is that it actually affects our nervous system. So our body starts reacting. It's like it's too much. Our body goes into this fight or flight mode. It is a protection mechanism to try and shut down this external influence, external stimuli coming in, so our body can actually process what is going on. Now, if you look at it from that perspective, stress is literally our respondability, not responsibility, our respondability to what is going on internally and externally. So it's a really deep thing when you think about it. It's kind of cool when you look at it from that perspective as well. So how do we move through this without running away or exploding into an angry outburst that we later regret and then shame ourselves for? That's the big thing. How do we deal with this stress? Now, the first thing we've got to be aware of is we need to be connected to our body enough so we can feel when that stress response is kicking in. Because like I said, it affects our nervous system. We literally get tense. For me, it's the shoulders. I can feel myself getting tense around the shoulders, and that is my first sign that my nervous system is starting to react and that I need to relax. But we need to be aware that this is happening. So the first thing you need to do is be connected to your body enough to know when that stress is starting to affect you physically. And this is where the things like meditation, yoga, breathing exercises, all of those well-being forms, this is where they are vitally important, because yes, it helps you deal with the stress after the fact, but it also helps you become aware of your body, so you are aware of when stress steps up in the first place. So once you're aware that stress is there, that yes, my nervous system is starting to react, I need to deal with this, this is where we step into our stages of self. And the first stage of self is our princess, because what's really happening when that stress kicks in, when our nervous system is standing up, is fear. It's a primal fear response, which means we need to address that. What is going on in this circumstance that I'm actually fearful of? Maybe it's, prime example for myself, a fight with my daughter over cleaning her room. The fear that comes out of that is that I am not a good parent. It's this fear that I have not taught her what she needs to live her life successfully. And then that fear starts progressing to the next stage of self. But once that fear is addressed, it starts calming down your nervous system immediately. So once you're aware this is happening in your body and you start addressing the fear, then you can move to the next stage of self, which is our mother goddess. And this is where we have to forgive that fear. It's shame and guilt through and through. We are conditioned over and over again to shame ourselves and for everything we're feeling and thinking. So when we have addressed that fear and gone, oh, I've got this fear inside of me, and then oh, this is ridiculous, why am I doing this to myself? Then you have to forgive that. You have to stand in your mother goddess and go, it's okay. It's okay that I'm feeling this way. It's okay that that fear is present. There is nothing wrong with that fear. I love myself despite that fear being present. From there, we can step into our wild woman, which is self-belief. We then get to look at the process we've been through so far and go, it's okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm strong enough to move through this, even though this has caused a reaction from me, even though my body is tense and then I'm still trying to process what's going on externally. It's okay. I've addressed the fear. I've forgiven myself for having that fear in the first place, and I know I can move through this. After those 3 stages, we move into our 4th stage, which is our dark queen and our seat of intuition. And I have to admit, she is one of my favorite stages of self, because from our dark queen, we can then start envisioning the best possible outcomes from this scenario. So we've addressed the fear, we've forgiven ourselves, we've found our self-belief and gone, yes, I can make it through this. And then we start going, okay, if I can make it through this, what could actually happen? What could be the best possible outcome? Maybe you've got a boss who is putting way, way too much work on you. You've addressed the fear of the fact that you feel like you'll never get through it, that you could eventually get fired because you're not keeping up with the work. You've seen the fear, you've forgiven yourself for it and gone, I'm human, I can only do so much. Then we've gone into self-belief and gone, no, I can do this. I can get through this. And then we move into that best possible outcome, which could be facing your boss and saying, hey, I need help here, please. Maybe it's turning to a colleague and saying, hey, can you help me get through this work? So the best possible outcome is then the resolution of this stressful situation. And then finally, we step into our sorceress, which is so, so cool, because she is the steps and the statement. She is our intention. So then we can get to that point where we can say to ourselves, okay, I intend to get help to resolve this problem. What steps do I need to take next? I need to go ask for help. And by cycling through those 5 stages of self, you can deal with stress in a really peaceful and I want to say effortless, yeah, that word way, but it does take practice. It's not something that just happens. You have to do it multiple times and multiple times again until it sinks in and becomes habit that this is how you deal with stressful situations. And like I said earlier, I'm still learning it myself. Stages of self, I really became aware of it and put it all together through my own health journey. Dealing with stress is the number one factor of it. So I've only been operating with this for the last 2 years as well. And I'm still learning to move my way through it. So the key things here is to know when you are reacting, know when your nervous system is starting to react to the external situations, and that your respondability to what's going on is under fire right now. Address the fear, forgive yourself, find that self-belief that you will make it through, look to what the best possible outcome could be, and then set your statement and take your steps. So that is how I deal with stress. And that is the conclusion of this week's Ask Melly session. And next week is going to be a really, really good one because we're going to look at duty or love, how to break out of the cycles of self-sacrifice. And this is something that is coming up time and time again, especially with the women I work with. We are so stuck in these cycles of self-sacrifice, and it is time to break ourselves free of it and step into love. So please join us next week as we step into that. And if you have any questions around maintaining patience when you're dealing with stressful situations, please leave a comment, reach out to me. And if you've got any questions for a future Ask Melly episode, you know where I am. Love and kindness, everyone.